The illusion we call life. Have you ever looked around and wondered, why are so many people unhappy? Every day, millions wake up to alarm clocks they hate, go to jobs they don't love, just to earn enough money to survive. They tell themselves, one day I'll finally be free. That one day is usually set at 65, the age of retirement, the promised land, the reward after a life of sacrifice. But for most, that day never really comes. They reach 65, look back and feel like they've missed the point. We're told that hard work leads to a good life. But what they didn't tell us is that hard work in the wrong direction just leads you further away from yourself. It leads you into burnout, into emotional numbness, and into a life that looks full from the outside, but feels empty within. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, didn't talk much about money. But he spoke of something more important, meaning. He believed that most people are not living fulfilled lives because they're not living authentically. They are trapped in roles and routines that numb their inner calling, and by the time they wake up, it's often too late. How people end up with nothing. At face value, nothing sounds like poverty. No money, no assets, no retirement. And yes, that's part of the tragedy. After decades of labor, many people still struggle financially. They sacrifice time, energy, and dreams, believing that the system would take care of them in the end. But the system was never designed for that. It rewards productivity, not purpose. But there's a deeper poverty, the spiritual poverty, the poverty of unrealized potential, the emptiness of knowing you never truly lived for yourself. You worked to maintain an identity that society handed to you. And when the job ends and the title fades, you're left staring in the mirror, asking, who am I without this? Carl Jung called this the shadow life, a life where your true self is buried beneath social conditioning, expectations, and fear. You followed the map everyone else used, only to discover it led you to a destination that doesn't feel like home. And that, more than anything else, is the greatest loss, not the money, but the unlived life. 2. Jung's warning, the unlived life. Jung believed that the deepest form of suffering wasn't trauma or loss, it was incompleteness. He said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because to do that, you must first realize how much of your life has been lived for others. That realization is painful, but it's also liberating. He warned us that the world rewards conformity. From a young age, we're trained to be useful, not to be whole. We're taught how to work, not how to live. We memorize formulas, follow rules, meet deadlines, but we're never really asked, what do you want to create? What does your soul crave? So we drift, we check boxes, we become experts at surviving, but amateurs at being. And when you suppress your true nature for long enough, it doesn't just disappear. It festers. It becomes bitterness, resentment, boredom, depression. That's why so many people hit a midlife crisis. It's not just a phase. It's a rebellion of the soul. Your inner self, neglected for decades, finally screams, "What about me?" 3. Individuation, the journey you were meant for. Jung introduced a concept called individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. It's not just about self-improvement. It's about integration, facing your shadow, confronting your wounds, and living a life that aligns with your deepest truth. Individuation doesn't happen automatically. It requires effort, courage, and often loss. You may have to unlearn the values you grew up with. You may have to walk away from people who don't recognize your growth. You may have to start over in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or later. But what's the alternative? A life of quiet desperation? Most people never begin this journey. They fear rocking the boat. They fear change. But here's the thing, the boat is already sinking if it's not going anywhere. Comfort is not the same as safety. You were not born to live the same year 80 times and call it a life. The journey of individuation is about reclaiming your inner authority. It's about making choices from your soul, not your survival instinct. It's about saying, this is who I am, even if the world doesn't approve. 4. Ancient wisdom, echoes from Stoicism and the East. This truth isn't just Jungian, it's timeless. Philosophers from across the world have echoed the same idea: a life not examined is a life not lived. The Stoics believed that clarity comes when you confront death. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think. It's a reminder that time is not a guarantee, and yet we live as though we're immortal. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the most sacred texts in Eastern philosophy, teaches us, it is better to live your own destiny imperfectly than to live an imitation of somebody else's life with perfection. This means that even if your path is uncertain, even if you stumble, it's still your path. And that makes it sacred. These ancient voices are whispering the same thing Jung shouted, don't wait until 65 to meet your true self. Begin now. Live now. Not just externally, but inwardly. You are not just a worker, you are a soul on a journey. 5. What can you do today? Or reclaiming the inner compass. The most important realization is this: transformation doesn't start with a big event. It starts with a decision, a quiet internal shift where you stop lying to yourself, where you stop pretending that one day is a good enough plan. Because the truth is, one day is a myth. There is no perfect moment to start over. There's just now. The raw, unpredictable, sacred now. So what can you do today? Start by getting radically honest. Sit with yourself without distraction and ask, am I proud of the life I'm building? Am I even the architect? Or am I just following blueprints handed down by others? This self-inquiry is uncomfortable, but it's the beginning of freedom. Until you see the cage, you can't leave it. Then take a small but intentional action. You don't need to quit your job tomorrow or burn your life down. But maybe you start writing again. Maybe you finally open that camera and talk to the world. Maybe you say no to something soul-draining or yes to something soul-expanding. Real change doesn't come from impulse, it comes from alignment. Ask, is this action closer to who I truly am? If the answer is yes, no matter how scary, take the step. Also, give yourself permission to slow down. Most people are in a rush, not because they're living fully, but because they're afraid of what will rise in the silence. But in that stillness, you'll begin to hear your true voice again, the one that speaks not in fear but in longing. Follow it. Because that's the compass you were born with, and it always knows the way back to yourself. The real retirement is from illusion, not labor. Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But let's be clear, most people never cash in on that privilege. Not because they can't, but because they're waiting for permission. Permission from society, from their parents, from their partner, from some future version of themselves that's somehow braver, richer, or more enlightened. But here's the secret. You don't need permission to be who you are. You just need courage. And not even the kind of courage that moves mountains, just the kind that moves you 1 inch closer to your truth. One word, one choice, one act of integrity at a time. Retirement was never the goal. Awakening is. Because even if you had $1 million at 65, it wouldn't matter if you lost yourself along the way. The real wealth is in self-knowledge, in love, in art, in freedom, in waking up every morning with the feeling that you are no longer pretending. That you are finally living your life. So the final question isn't what will you do when you retire? It's what would your life look like if you stopped postponing your soul? The answer to that is everything. Subscribe if this stirred something inside you. Share it with someone who's waking up too. This is more than a channel. It's a movement for the ones ready to live before it's too late.